I really don't know what Phytophthora is. So what is it?
Well, it is a fungal-like organism, but it's not a fungus. It's actually a brown algae that has lost its chloroplasts.
This production was recorded at the podcast studios in the Media Arts Centre at Murdoch University. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Murdoch University. Any content provided by the hosts and guests are their personal opinions and are not intended to represent the views or opinions of the university, its administration, faculty, or staff. Now we have that out of the way, let's talk science. Paramount importance.
They're called stomatopiles or stomatophiles, and they are related to brown algae and malaria, the apicomplexans for that matter. So the organisms that are also in that are also organisms that have lost their chloroplasts, but they're related to brown algae.
No way.
Yeah.
Only times I've thought about brown algae, I'm thinking in the ocean or
they probably evolved while brown algae were evolving, and they probably came onto land at the same time as first land plants.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. First question straight away, mind blown.
Yeah.
So how many species are there?
Well, there are approximately 270 described species right now, but that's just multiplying. I'm reviewing a paper at the moment where they're describing 2 species. I'm helping write another paper that's got 3 species. I've got maybe 10 more species from Western Australia that if I ever had the time, I could describe them. So I think what we knew for most of the last century were the 40 or 50 so species that were known to cause disease in agriculture. But once diseases started to appear in natural ecosystems and people went looking in natural ecosystems, many, many, many more Phytophthora species have been recovered and described.
Right. So, not all of them are impactful. Some of them are just there.
Well, not all of them are impactful. Some of them may not even be pathogens at all. So they could be, there seems to be a couple of groups that are more saprophytic in that they live on dead or dying organic matter, so on leaves when they fall into water or onto the ground. And there's quite a lot of species in those sorts of groups. There are also other ones that, they're not known to cause a disease as yet where they've been found, but we don't know what they would do if they encountered new plant species that they haven't encountered before.
Right, if they became invasive or translocated. Are they multicellular or are they like singular and then sort of spread out? Like, what do they kind of look like?
Well, they grow by hyphae. So hyphae are like one cell thick, they're, like sort of threads, and those threads grow, but they have cell walls within them because they have cell walls like plants. They've got cell walls with cellulase in them like a plant. And then they have their various reproductive structures. Most of them are single cellular reproductive structures, but they produce a lot of them. So within the organism itself, there'll be many cells, but it's not the structure of a multicell organism, as in it doesn't have a shape.
Can you see it with the naked eye? Are they kind of been like no? Right.
Need a microscope.
Just the impacts. How does it impact the plant? Like what does it do?
It depends about the species, and so we might have to tighten this up a little bit because I'll do a little bit of general stuff now, but maybe we want to get more specific onto like Phytophthora cinnamomi, which is the big problem here in Western Australia. But amongst the species, there are species that attack the leaves of plants like Phytophthora infestans, which causes potato blight, or the fruits of plants like Phytophthora palmivora, which is really common across the tropics and has a really big impact on fruits, or the stems of plants. So there are Phytophthora that cause stem diseases, a whole range of them. And then there are root diseases. So there are Phytophthora that will attack the roots of plants. So the parasitic Phytophthora, they enter more like a necrotic pathogen, so they will cause, mostly it's thought that they produce enzymes that destruct walls and stuff like that and then break them down and cause necrosis.
They sound quite destructive. Do they have beneficial impacts to plants as well?
Very good question. The answer is probably not that clear yet, because I don't think people have really spent very much time looking at whether they could be beneficial. They can certainly be benign, so they can be asymptomatic in non-hosts, and they can cause no particular disease, but whether there's any benefit from that, wouldn't really know yet.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's kind of like the only plant or animal I can really think that's only got negative impacts or no impacts at all.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's just it. There must be beneficial impact. I mean, there's the whole concept of plant-soil feedback, or the Jansen-Connell hypothesis, so where it could have a positive impact on the structure of an ecosystem, because in order to get your sort of maintain your diversity within an ecosystem. So you could have these rather weak Phytophthora pathogens which can accumulate in the roots of plants, in the root zone of the parent. And if the seed tried to germinate there, it would be like a damping off pathogen and the seed wouldn't germinate. So that would encourage the seeds to have to be dispersed further away to germinate out of the zone of the parent plant. So it stops monodominance. So that's one of the theories that exists around Phytophthora. Yeah.
Yeah, right. How does it survive?
There are resting structures. So, it's not even a true resting structure. They produce oospores, most species. Some species are sterile and don't. Oospores are their sexual spore. So this is when you get an Ogonia, which is the female, and Antheridia, there's a male, and that mating occurs just by anastomosis, like an attachment, and you'll get an oospore forming. And oospores have rather thick walls. And though they are meant to be able to survive, some people have said, for up to 10 years in soil. But there are other structures that various Phytophthoras, we know this for Phytophthora cinnamomi, so the dieback fungus in the southwest of Western Australia, it makes the plants make other structures too to protect it. So if you have Phytophthora within a plant root, it might be the plant might try to wall it off, which was to put callose or lignin about it, but at the same time it doesn't kill it, it's only walled it off. So then that can become also a way that it can remain viable for a very long time within fragments of plants. That's why it's really hard to get rid of.
Yeah. How does it spread?
Usually by something to do with people.
Yeah.
So usually by movement of soil or plants.
I mean,
it can move naturally by root-to-root contact or in water. But, for example, so there are species within the genus that are very much water lovers. But, for example, we never recover Phytophthora cinnamomi from waterways. So it appears here in Western Australia not to survive in water very well at all. So it would have to be moving within the soil, and then it would normally be root to root. So there's estimations that it can move uphill about 1 metre a year and downhill about 3 metres a year by root to root contact between plants.
Really? Crazy. Why do they block off national parks when there's been lots of rain? Because I was told it was because
Is it only when it's lots of rain, or is it not all the time? I mean, there's obviously always signs around, dieback's present here or dieback's not present there, and you're asked to clean off your boots. I guess, yes. Maybe there are some areas that are also blocked off more after rain. It's just basically because you collect mud on your boots and then you'll move to the next place and you could spread it on your boots more than anything.
Right,
or,
okay.
of course, on trail bikes or
Yeah.
car tyres or any of the other things that also pick up mud on.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Mm.
In like, how beneficial are microbes and harmful pathogens in soils and forests? Like, is it like a battlefield, or is there a delicate balance between them? Like, I'm guessing it's when, say, Cinnamomum is more prevalent, it's out competed the other microbes.
I mean that again is a double question. It depends whether you're in a scenario where everything's in balance, and then it is always like a game. It's a backwards and forwards. There's always beneficials and there's always pathogens, and there's some sort of balance that's struck between them, and nothing's out of balance. When you've got an invasive species, it just changes all of that. So in general, in most places where the climate and the soil and everything is conducive, the pathogen will have the ascendance. But even in Western Australia, where we have such big problems with PC or Phytophthora cinnamomi, there are soils that appear to be suppressive, and that would usually be around them having a high organic matter content, so there's just lots of microbial activity. And so when those thin, like hyphae, are growing through the soil, they're being attacked by other soil organisms, bacteria, other fungi, little invertebrates that will attack it. And so that sort of prevents it being able to move or spread so easily.
Do you know which ones they are?
Funnily enough, we have a student working on this right now.
Right, okay.
So we could probably say a little bit more about that in about 2 years' time.
Yep.
Yeah, but, I mean, carry-loam, for example, is considered to be quite suppressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that get used as like a way to eradicate it? Is it like something that could be cultivated and then used put somewhere?
Whether you could find specific microorganisms. Well, you'd have to keep them established within the soil, and really the whole concept of the soil microbiome, or the soil, the biotic component of the soil, is that if you have good organic soil, then you will sustain a good population or a good amount and diversity of various organisms, which all sort of balance things out themselves. So it's very hard to just take an organism and put it somewhere and think it's going to do a job for you. You actually have to change the soil. So you can do that in agriculture when you're manipulating the growing environment for a crop or even a tree crop, but it's very hard to do that in a natural ecosystem.
What does the PC do to the plant? Like, how does it effectively kill it? Like, what's it doing?
Well, it starts at the fine roots, mostly. So there is some variability, but mostly it's what's considered a fine root feeder. And so it eats away at the fine roots and basically wipes them out. So when that happens, you would have this scenario where, while there's a lot of soil moisture around, the plant's still sort of okay somehow, but as soon as it dries out, it doesn't have the roots to explore the soil to find water, and then so it'll look like it's died from drought.
Right. So climate change could be, like when they go through droughts, hugely impactful for our bushland.
So the whole concept of a very wet winter, which is a wonderful environment for Phytophthora, and then a very dry summer could really exacerbate the impact. But that's one of the mechanisms. There are other mechanisms, like a lot of plant species are really susceptible around their collar. That's the bit between the roots and the shoot, that area there. Don't know why, but it often gets in there and it will cause a canker and effectively ring bark it. So that's another way it can function.
A canker is like a ring, like stripping away the bark around?
Well, a canker is like a disease or like a cancer on a plant. Yeah, it'll be like a wound, and the plant will try to fight it, but it won't be able to. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Is it introduced? Like, was it always in our bushland?
No, it's definitely introduced here.
Right. Where is there been tracked from where it's come from?
It is thought to have come from Southeast Asia.
Right.
But maybe the actual location within Southeast Asia is not clear, but it seems to have come from Southeast Asia.
Do they know how potentially? Is it like just someone bringing over plants or just?
It probably arrived here in Australia in general quite a long time ago, like way before the impact was noticed. And it probably was a consequence of repotting plants during ship voyages and, because initially plants were transported live, or a lot of them were transported live. So that it's probably came with soil.
In Southeast Asia, does it have like no negative impacts because that's like its natural environment, or is it because it's only like
not a lot within like forests, but quite a lot in agriculture.
How is like Phytophthora different around the world? Because you've worked
around the world.
Globally on so many different things.
Well, you've got species like Phytophthora cinnamomi, which is a global problem. So it's a global problem for agriculture and in natural ecosystems.
Is it the worst one of the Phytophthora species?
I think so.
Yeah. If
you talk to an agricultural scientist, they might say like Phytophthora infestans, which infects potato, or Phytophthora nicotiani. Because crop losses, you can lose 40 to 100% of your crop to a Phytophthora species if it's the wrong time, wrong place. So they'd probably say one of them. But the biggest impact on natural ecosystems, well, again, the Americans might disagree because they've got Phytophthora remorum, which causes sudden oak death. But I think Phytophthora cinnamomi, because of its extraordinarily broad host range and its really big impact here in southwest of Western Australia, but also in the Cape region of South Africa. That's the other area where it's got a very huge impact. So it appears...
Is that because its climate's very similar to ours?
Well, you'd think so. It's actually also all of Mediterranean Europe. And I think it comes to that mechanism I said where it nibbles away. So you've got a winter that's not cold enough to stop it growing. It nibbles away at the roots. And then you've got a summer that's dry. Whereas say you're in the tropics, you've got water most of the year. And so you don't, plant keeps growing roots. It doesn't have that impact. I think it is the cycling between a warmish wet winter and a hot dry summer. But yeah, that's probably, and I mean, of course, it's also a problem over east in the heathlands. But there are a lot of our Western Australian genera that are impacted, but it's the Proteaceae that are really, really, really susceptible.
Oh, really? I thought it would be the eucalypts.
No, the eucalypts are, in general, quite resistant, especially once they're a tree.
Really?
Yeah. So you'll get damping off in seedlings and little young plants, but mostly the trees are fine.
Oh, I thought that's what was causing some of those big jarrah trees to die was...
There is evidence of jarrah trees dying from Phytophthora cinnamomi, usually in water-gaining areas. So there's been a lot of ponding of water, and so it will get in at an area where it can block the through the whole of the upper part, maybe by getting in around the base of the plant. But in general, eucalypts aren't as susceptible as you think they are. That's why... So it used to be called jarrah dieback, but we are very much in the favour of promoting it just as Phytophthora dieback.
Yeah. So what are the Proteaceae species, like types of plants for general public to know?
Well, that's like the Banksias, all the Banksia species, and all the other, like the Petrophyles and all the other. I mean, they're none of them are as amazing as the Banksia. So, I mean, I would say the Banksia ones are the ones that people are going to see. So you'll see, dead Banksia grandis or dead Banksia attenuata, and that's usually Phytophthora cinnamomi.
What could be the impacts if Phytophthora cinnamomi just runs wild, unregulated, or just let go on loose, and then it kills everything around it? We would have a collapse in our bushland, wouldn't we? Because it's all the...
Well, you can go and see where that's happened, and you can see the collapse in the bushland. So, most people would go, say, walk up in the hills, up in the jarrah forest, and they'd be walking. They think, oh, this is a lovely green forest. This is really lovely. I walk through and I just see everything that's missing. So, where it's been, there would just be a whole lot of things missing.
I know that exact feeling. I would probably be one of those general public people walking through the bushland and thinking, oh, it's just a different landscape. But like when I've gone and dived in coral reefs in different parts of the world, people would say, oh, it's amazing to see this. But then I'm looking into there's all the other fish and corals and reefs, and it's just like urchins everywhere. So I'd imagine.
So what happens, like if you see a dieback front down on the south coast, like and it's edged into the Fitzgerald, but other places there in the Quonk and down on the south coast, you'll see like a clear line, and you'll have your proteaceous, ericaceous, rich heathland, and on the other side it's lots of sedges and rushes and things like that aren't susceptible.
What does it look like? Like, when say if you're walking out in those areas and and you come across an area that's affected by it, what are you sort of seeing?
Well, the absence of quite a lot of
can you see when a plant's affected, like when it's just started?
They start to change colour. They'll go yellow first before they die.
Okay.
So you can see a dieback front, like you can see it quite clearly. That in that sort of environment, like you could probably see it reasonably clearly in the forest as well. But sometimes when you're in a forest, you see the trees and you don't really see the lines that are happening. Mind you, I bet a dieback interpreter. There's some very specialised people that can see all of that. But if you go into the heathland, you can see it almost like as a straight line. You'd be able to walk along the line and say, there is Phytophthora here.
It moves like a line.
Well, it can. We'll go in contours, or it will be moving from like an infected patch and out. You'll be able to walk around it. You'll know where it's infected.
Right. If you start seeing it, does it mean it's too late?
You can do spot eradications, and it has been proven that you can do spot eradications, but it takes quite a lot of resources, and it hasn't been done very often.
Right.
So there was a whole lot of work that was done maybe 10 to 15 years ago, showing that if you remove all the vegetation from where it's infested and a margin around it and keep it fallow for a period of at least 2 years, you can actually get pretty good eradication out of there, and you can probably stop it spreading further. So obviously the smaller the spot that was, the better off you would be to do that. But it's quite radical. It's pretty much you have to nuke the site more or less.
Yeah. Like it seems impossible. Like you can't do that when it's gone through a big bushland.
No.
Like it's
No.
Is there ways to like slow it down or?
Well, that's what's already in place as much as it can, like trying that asset protection, which is where they try to have barriers so people don't take vehicles, and why you have the cleaning stations for boots and stuff like that. That is to try to protect the areas where it isn't, so that it doesn't get in there.
Is that what elsewhere in the world they're doing for it as well, or they have different methods?
We have probably put more resources into this than almost anywhere else in the world, except perhaps I would say in New Zealand with the cowrie dieback in New Zealand, which isn't caused by Phytophthora cinnamomi. The cowrie dieback is caused by Phytophthora agathodicida, great name.
Yep.
Which is almost, and it seems that it is almost a host-specific pathogen, so it doesn't have a broad host range like Phytophthora cinnamomi, but there's a lot of effort there to try to restrict the spread and movement of Phytophthora agathodicida through what remains of the cowrie forest in New Zealand. So they've put a lot of resources in. In California, the forestry, California and then into Oregon and Washington State with Phytophthora ramorum, there have been very large attempts to try to stop that spreading through the environment. And again, it's a lot of cutting out all the hosts, so all the potential hosts out of an area and trying to spot eradicate from an area. But again, that is a pathogen that doesn't have the same like huge host range that Phytophthora cinnamomi does here. So they've sort of got something more to work with.
Yeah, sounds like with PC that it's almost like an impossible fight in a way. If it's like you can only see it when it's too late, you can't eradicate when it's gone through large areas. Like how can we combat this? Apart from just like the segregating and washing your boots, like is there hope that one day it's like can be on top of it, or is it?
Well, the Dieback Working Group, which is sort of a non-for-profit organisation that does a lot to promote education around dieback. So there's a lot done to try to educate particularly communities that are in close association with remnant areas to get them on board in protecting. So that's sort of the asset protection side of things. I mean, that is probably the best thing that we have to protect is to try to prevent additional areas getting infested. Yeah.
Yeah. So
now you're making me all depressed. It's sort of like, we've hit the point where you go, is there anything that you can do?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things. So I don't know if you've ever heard or seen anybody using phosphite to protect plants. Have you ever heard of it or seen it?
Well, only from your presentation that I was reading through.
Okay, so phosphite is PO3 minus, so phosphate is PO4 minus and phosphite is PO3 minus. It's used as a like fungicide, and I'm using that in inverted commas because that's not really how it functions. What it does is it can't be metabolized by the plants. The plants perceive it as a foreign entity, and it induces a resistance response in them. And that resistance response that is induced by the phosphite helps them to fight off the Phytophthora.
Kind of like a vaccine.
Yeah, it's kind of like a vaccine. Well, a vaccine might last longer. This will last until the concentration grows out of the plant.
Okay.
So there is, like at the actual contact, like between a root tip and the Phytophthora, there is some direct action. Like Phytophthora doesn't like phosphite, or Phytophthora cinnamomi doesn't like phosphite. There are other Phytophthora species that don't care. So it will actually damage it directly, but in general it's through the induction of the plant's immune response that it functions. So you will see people injecting trees, particular bankseas.
Oh, so actually like injecting into trees.
Injection. So with these syringes, you inject it into the phloem. It's very interesting. It moves in it will move in the phloem and the xylem, so with the waters or the sugars, so it can be distributed throughout all the growing points of the plant. Source sink, it will grow to where the plant is growing, which is where Phytophthora is likely to impact. But there's also down in the southwest, in some of the very highly species-rich areas where there's rare and endangered flora, they have used this ultralight volume spraying, aerial spraying with really small droplet size, and then it will get absorbed through the leaves of the plant and protect the plant for a period of time.
Are they doing that over like the Fitzgerald National Park or like
small areas?
Small areas.
Like it's not done.
Imagine it's quite expensive too.
Well, phosphite isn't expensive, and fixed wing aircraft aren't particularly expensive, but it's not actually registered by the APVMA, which is the Australian Pesticide and Veterinary Medicine Association, that register the use of chemicals. It is registered for like research purposes, and Western Australia has a licence to use it a little bit more than that, but in general it hasn't been licensed for use in natural ecosystems
Is that
yet.
something that's going to change?
There's a process going through at the moment to try to get it registered for use. Not actually driven out of Western Australia, because we're probably doing what we can, particularly in the Stirlings and stuff, to protect what's there on a regular program. But over east, the heathlands are being really severely impacted, and there's places in Victoria where if they don't stop the movement of cinnamomi through that, there won't be any heathlands left. The pacrids.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. If a plant is like heavily infected with it, can that help bring it back?
Yes. I guess it depends how heavily infected, whether there's been like if it's just in the root system, yeah, probably you could suppress it. If it's got into the actual woody tissue, it would probably be harder. But I've seen plants come back because if it gives them an opportunity to be able to respond and wall it off. So that's what plants do when something's happening that they don't like. They try to build a barrier to wall it off, and they can do that.
Right. What about post-mining restoration? Because they move large quantities
of soil.
Yeah.
So, well, when the whole planning we're mainly talking about the restoration, the mining of bauxite, but there are other companies doing other things that also are in Phytophthora infested areas. They retain the topsoil. That topsoil will have either they separate it between Phytophthora infested topsoil and clean topsoil. So it will then be put back either as clean topsoil or infested topsoil because there's no way of eradicating it out of the topsoil. So so if you're doing a restoration where there's no infested topsoil, anything will grow. If you're doing a restoration where the topsoil is infested, you have to make sure that you're planting species that are tolerant or resistant to Phytophthora.
Right, but that's then changing the ecosystem.
It was already like that. If it's been Phytophthora impacted, it's already lost the species.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it before about hotspots around the world, but I'm quite interested. I just want to know, in the southwest of Australia, is there really big hotspots that we need to be worried of? Or?
Well, there's areas that we really need to protect, which is all the quangan, and that's
What's that?
That's the proteaceous heathlands. That's our heathlands. So the Banksia heathlands that Perth is built on, for example, that we keep on clearing, and north, all the way up to Iniaba, that's proteaceous or quangan heathlands, and then there's also in the south there's proteaceous. So it's they grow on the very, very nutrient poor soil, if you want to call it that, the sands that we have, that are proteaceous heathlands. They are the areas that are most susceptible and need the biggest protection. As far as where we get our highest recoveries from, I would say that that's a little bit hard to say because it's sort of the mapping is done in response to a need, so it doesn't necessarily represent exactly what's out there. It's not random. It's targeted surveying that's done. So I couldn't really say. But a lot of our forests are mapped for dieback infested and dieback uninfested areas by dieback interpreters.
You've mentioned that before. What's a dieback interpreter? How is that different to
it's an
you as a
ecologist
scientist?
Who's trained. There's a whole training program to go through, trained to be able to detect where Phytophthora is and isn't based on indicator plant species.
Oh, so it's tracking it by plants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then so they will have a contour map of an area and they will walk that area. I think there's a hell of a lot of walking done, and they will map where it is and where it isn't, and uninterpretable areas. So there might be death due to drought or something, so you can't really interpret why the plants died. And they will take samples in areas where they're not 100% sure, and they'll send them to the Vegetation Health Service at DBCA, and they will determine if Phytophthora is present there or not.
Right. With climate change, would it be getting worse with having those, I guess, extreme weather events? Or
Yeah. We don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's not necessary. If you did a species distribution map and you place climate over it, so that sort of future climate sort of modelling, you would probably say that the areas that are suitable are going to shrink because the climate is theoretically getting drier. Because it is a waterborne organism, it needs free water to move around. You would say it is not going to do very well if the climate dries. But the flip side of that is, as long as the winter is wet enough to sustain it, and as long as the propagules can last through the summers, probably won't make any difference.
One of the climate models says about more extreme rainfalls in summer, is it like, would that not impact it? Like, are they only spawning like one time of the year, or can they just spawn?
No,
all
anytime.
time?
It's anytime. Yeah. So yes, that could make it much worse. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's in terms of like I guess you got land clearing, climate change, drought, PC, in level of like the dangers for our bushland or the Australian bushland, where would it sit?
Well, it's one of the key threatening processes that are recognised in Australia. So it's in the list of key threatening invasive species, along with things like rabbits and foxes and things like that. It personally, I think it is where it is. It's probably the most impactful in various types of vegetation. In certain vegetation, it's having much more of an impact than anything else would, but not in all vegetation. So it's quite ecosystem dependent. So again, these Quangan heathlands or the proteaceous heathlands are going to be the area where I think the number one threatening process to that area is actually Phytophthora.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're not being cleared, because they're not good for agriculture, and they're already in quite harsh areas. The climate, it mightn't have the same impact.
And the biggest cause for its movement is humans every time?
There's been studies done that show, wild pigs will move it around because they wallow in mud and then move around. I mean, so that's been shown. So, I think people have, I guess any animal like kangaroos moving through and picking up mud could move it along. So, yes, humans wouldn't be the only thing that can move it, but we're certainly the ones that can move it the furthest, probably.
You and others have put together like a massive database. What does this mean? How can this help combat its impacts?
Well, this is a database that is a global database. So this is taking the story a little bit further. So this isn't about Phytophthora cinnamomai in Western Australia. This is about the impacts of Phytophthora globally. So it's a database that contains every species that's been described, the traits of those species, so their morphological features, their physiological tolerances, like the temperature range they grow in, the diseases they cause, the number of hosts that they have, the number of countries they've been detected in. So it's sort of like a trait database. And we are keeping that up to date with every single record that ever gets produced around the world for a host location Phytophthora combination. And what that's helping to do is to create baselines for people, because if you don't have the baseline data, you don't know if something you're getting is new and needs to be responded to, or it's just something that's in your natural environment. So I guess in a way something like that helps create backbones, but we can then also look at the species that are the most invasive, and we can look at the traits of those species that are the most invasive, and then we can compare it to newly described species, and we can see if any of the newly described species share some of those traits and could potentially be as impactful as the ones we already know about. So I think it just helps people have more informed decision-making processes when they find something. The most common place that people will record a new Phytophthora species in a country will be in a nursery or a botanical garden or in agriculture or something like that. That's because they're the place where people are looking at their plants all the time, and they'll see that something's wrong with the plant, and they'll have a look at it and they'll go, oh, I wonder what's causing this, and they'll get back an identification and they'll go, I've never heard of that before. Is that here? Isn't it here? So we're helping people in that sort of scenario so they can know whether things are being introduced or not.
Is that still the leading cause of why it's translocating throughout the world?
Plants for planting, it's called, the plant movement pathway,
Yeah.
So for us in Australia, we have no excuse. We should not get anything that we don't already have here ever again. We've got pretty good restrictions about the movement of plant material, and soil is not a component of plant material supposedly coming into Australia. So we shouldn't get anything else. But you have places like particularly across the Northern Hemisphere where there are just like, bare-rooted plants coming from all countries around the world, moving through big nurseries and being planted, all over the place. So they are seeing a lot of movement. Yeah.
Right. Are they having like dire effects? I know you mentioned like the Carries in New Zealand, but like through Europe and all that, are they having like as bad of effects as we are with the like Phytophthora?
Different species in different places, yes. Yeah. So there's.
I saw you talked about the oak killer.
Yeah. So the cork oaks, for example, are very susceptible to Phytophthora cinnamomi, and so that's a big impact in Southern Europe and other vegetation in Southern Europe. Another really bad one is Phytophthora ostracedri, which is it was described first from Argentina, from Ostracedrus. Maybe that's where it originated. I don't think we know for sure. But that's having a really big impact on junipers in Scotland, for example. There is what they call Phytophthora auni, which is a species which attacks alders. And alders are the genera that it's along all the waterways in Europe. It's always an alder species, and this is a waterborne Phytophthora that is killing. Like if you go nearly any waterway in Europe, you will see a whole lot of dead trees along the banks, and that will be because of Phytophthora auni, and it is destabilising the banks of these rivers and stuff like that. So that's really bad, and that's all the way north. And it is a new species. It's a hybrid that was generated probably in a nursery sometime in the last 50 or 100 years. It's
generated in a nursery?
Yeah, well, it spontaneously formed. It's a hybrid between two species that shouldn't have been able to come together, but they did.
Oh, no way. That's shocking. Like,
yeah.
It's like, globally, is there like a lot of work being done on the Phytophthora species, or is it still like just because it sounds like governments across the world need to like sort of work together to stop this, and it's like
I would say that there is a reasonable amount of work done. There is a lot of work done on impacts in agricultural situations and the control and management of Phytophthora diseases in agriculture. So there's, when they've developed fungicide resistance or something like that, there'll be things about breeding for new lines that are resistant to the Phytophthora, or there'll be a whole lot of like molecular physiology work to understand the mechanisms of resistance. And so there's a lot of work done in agriculture. Most of the work done in natural ecosystems has been a lot of noting impacts, really, like watching it happen and noting the impact with intervention, as I mentioned before, in California with the sudden oak death and north on the Pacific West Coast. There's been quite a lot of intervention there. So, I mean, it varies a little bit. There is some work to try to manage it better. But, I mean, I should take it just one step back. One of the key places to manage is through nurseries, because if you don't have a clean nursery, you can spread disease from your nursery to anywhere. So there's big moves elsewhere in the world around restoration nurseries and making sure that they're clean. Yeah. So there's a whole lot of phytosanitary things you can do within a nursery to make sure you're working clean, and the things that you're using in the nursery and the plants that you're sending out are clean. So there's that sort of stuff gets done a lot. So, I mean, there are a lot of people doing research on it at different points in time, but a lot of the work that has been done, I have to admit, is more noting the impact rather than preventing the impact.
What are the biggest challenges in like convincing governments and communities to take action? Has that been fairly straightforward, or has it been pushed back? I guess you've got like the agricultural departments, and then you've got...
Again, it depends. it's like around business cases, isn't it? It's like about return on investment. It's like, what is the impact, and how much does it cost to manage that impact? And do we value the thing that's being impacted enough to spend that money in preserving it? So I think in natural ecosystems, that's always the biggest problem, is trying to convince somebody that you'd be better off doing something now before it gets worse. Like, it's hard to respond to something when you can't see the damage. So yes, I would say that one of the biggest challenges is to get enough attention given to a problem. And it's probably cyclic, like something will get attention for a period of time, and then there'll be a lot of media about it, there'll be a lot of good outcomes, and then it's, that they'll say, well, we've funded that now, and then, it goes out of fashion for a while, and then there'll be another big push and there'll be more rounds of funding. And I mean, that happens a little bit over time, and there's not very much you can do about it. But anyone that's working in, all the rangers, everyone that works in natural environments, they're on the ground and they see impacts. And I guess they do things on a daily basis to try to preserve areas within forests.
In your research, have you seen big changes in policies or communities?
Have I seen, well, not in my research, but over the period of time, have I seen big changes? I mean, Western Australia was very much on the front foot in managing this in the forests, and has been and has continued to be. There is still quite a big program around the mapping of where Phytophthora cinnamomi is and isn't, and that has been a constant commitment of resources over 35 to 40 years now. So that is probably quite extraordinary. And when we talk to other people anywhere else in the world, they're always impressed by the amount of effort that we have gone to try to protect what we can protect. I'm not aware of any additional policies or anything like this. I mean, it's the whole thing with invasion biology. The biggest return on the investment is preventing it getting here in the first place. And then, and when something gets a foothold, maybe you can eradicate it and it costs a little bit more, but it doesn't happen. And then you get to a point where you're at asset-based protection, and that's all you can do. And with Phytophthora cinnamomi, we're at asset-based protection.
Right, yeah. In your career, you've done, I'd imagine, a lot of field work, travelled all in different places. Has it always been, I've got a bit more of a personal question now, because I'd imagine you've done so many different things. Surely there's been a few mishaps.
Oh, there's always been a few mishaps.
Yeah. Has there been any that you're willing to share that?
There's a couple of, sometimes it's just funny. There's, how unprepared it wouldn't happen these days. I have to say that the health and safety and ramp forms and your risk management and everything. But sometimes you just end up in unusual situations. I think one that really stands out to me is that and it wasn't working on Phytophthora, we were looking at canker diseases in acacias on the Tiwi Islands north of Darwin. And we flew out there in one of these tiny little aeroplanes, which didn't get up above the clouds. So it was one of these trips where you don't get to see the ground, and you're going, well, this is interesting. And then we got there, and then I'm going to say something like a metre of rainfall. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I think it was somewhere in that vicinity of how much rain fell in 36 hours. Wow. So the whole island was completely flooded, and we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So we couldn't do the work we were meant to do. But the highest point on the island, because it's quite flat, is actually where the airstrip it was. So after about 48 hours or something like that, they said they could come and fly us back. And we went out before we were going back, and we would completely, cut, all our gear, and we were standing in water up to our, and I thought, well, that was definitely one of the most interesting field trips I ever went on. And I have to say that flight out was one of the scariest things that I've ever done in my life.
Going through the storm or like?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really stormy anymore, but it wasn't very comfortable being in a plane.
Yeah. I can imagine so, especially with that much rain. I can remember the activity around would be pretty full on.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And I've got another one that I just think is really I just think I mean, it was a wonderful trip. The whole thing was wonderful, but this is going back in time 20 odd years ago, and I mean we were working on a project that had a component in China, and I was looking at new and emerging pests and pathogens of plantation eucalypts. And I'd set up these taxa trials in all these countries that were starting to grow eucalypt plantations, and we'd sent them like 30 different tree species. And the lot I sent to China, they said, it's fantastic. We've set up 3 trial sites. And I thought, this is great. But they'd set them all up in areas where there were no eucalypts already, so they didn't have any pests or pathogens. They were completely disease-free. One got completely destroyed by a typhoon, so I never got to see this one. But another one that I did get to see, I was met in Guangzhou at the airport, and they said, we're getting on a plane and we're going somewhere. And I didn't actually know where I was going, so I just got on a plane and I went somewhere. And then we got on another plane that was even smaller, and we went somewhere else. And I was with people that didn't speak a lot of English, and then we were getting further and further and further. And it was amazing, and it was a really amazing trip. But I spent about a week having no idea where I was, with no connection to anywhere. And it was an extraordinary trip. It was just like, the places we went to eat and the country that we got to see and this trial. And I mean, it was all amazing, but I certainly wasn't phoning in every day, giving my location.
That's definitely changed a bit now.
Yeah, definitely changed now.
Right. Well, so would that be one of the best places you've gone to work with, like?
No, I've been to lots of good places for work, yeah. I mean, I spent quite a lot of time in Vietnam. Again, a lot of this has been with eucalyptus. So, it's gone up mountains in Vietnam, looking either for Phytophthora or looking at plantations. That's been pretty extraordinary. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Africa and in the southern Africa with eucalypts, South America with eucalypts. Yeah, been to some really interesting places.
Must be amazing to be able to travel so much with like for work and see so many. And like, I know for myself, but I know for a lot of people, when they go to travel, they want to go see the natural areas and all that, and you get to just
and it's a totally different experience. Like when I was younger, I travelled a lot I'd hate to say it, but as a tourist, I mean, as a backpacker, but you're still a tourist, aren't you? And it's such a different experience when you're being hosted somewhere by somebody who lives there, and just the places that you go, the people that you get to meet, the places that you get to see are just so very different. It's a wonderful experience. So. Yeah.
I know every time I've like traveled or gone somewhere that, like, having that science brain, you just want to know how it works and functions and like what is here, what is this, what is like all that. So you'd be able to like go see those places and have those people to speak to, I can imagine would be pretty extraordinary too.
Yeah. No, it's certainly a privilege. It's one of the wonderful things about having a life in research.
Hopefully my career starts going in that direction. But so has there been like because that was out of your control though with the plane and the rainfall. Has there been times though when it's been like, oh no, I've stuffed up? Like
no, never. No, I mean you plan these things. Yeah. You generally, I don't think, no, there's been more things like my very, 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 very first field experiment that I ever planted, which was huge. It was a mycorrhizal experiment on blue gums in the southwest of Western Australia in the mid-80s. We're talking a long time ago. And we planted it in this area, and that night there was the out-of-season frost and every single plant died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's sort of out of your control. So, I think more things that are things often go wrong, but they're often out of your control.
Yeah. Was that for like PhD that? Or
No, it was pre-PhD.
Okay. It's master's honours or something like that.
No, I was working at CSIRO on a project on it. Yeah.
Right.
Right at the beginning of the blue gum industry.
Yeah. On my grandparents' farm, there's blue gum farms around that. It was like a big, initiative's not the right word.
It was a big push in the early 2000s.
Is there been a lot of repercussions from it now?
There's a lot less. So it really expanded out quite big while there was a lot of management investment schemes. So the companies that started early, they have very stable areas and they grew plantations to deliver a certain amount of chip to whatever their contract was, and they maintained quite small footprints, I guess, to a certain extent. But then when the management investment schemes got involved, they pushed further and out into the drier areas, and they've contracted back in now because it just wasn't suitable for a lot of them. Yeah.
Right. Did the blue gum plantations have an effect on the environment, like water, and did they change the water table or?
Short term.
Short term?
Yeah. I mean, it will recharge again. Yeah. So, but I think that's the thing about the drier areas. The first rotation often went okay because there was enough water in the ground, or it didn't make it all the way through the first rotation because they got to about year 4, year 5, and they'd exhausted the water available, and then you started to see death, or they just stopped growing, stuck there, and so that was a problem, and then diseases would get in because they weren't doing very well, but there was a lot of work done on the hydrology back in the day, not by me personally, but there was a lot of people working on it, and they would look at the recharge. So once they're cleared, the water table would recharge again. But
Would have they impact in those certain like floodplains or wetlands or rivers at the time? There would be an impact, I would imagine.
Yeah, but planting trees often improve catchments if there were meant to be trees there. So it just depends where you are. Yeah.
There's like one estuary which has puzzled us. There's usually in every estuary there's this type of fish, this family of fish that exists in the ocean, it exists in rivers, it exists everywhere. But there's one estuary doesn't have that species in there. And because that species, that family of fish can recruit from, as I said, from up rivers from the ocean. So why doesn't it not exist here? And there's a big blue gum plantation around it. And I thought there has to be a link from that somehow, because there's also historical records before the blue gum plantation that there was marron in the upper parts of this river. They're not there now. And there's when we did the invertebrate studies, really low numbers of invertebrates. So I don't
know.
It's puzzled everyone that we've spoken to about it. We don't know why that could be the case, but I think, I thought there has to be some relation to that. But I'm not too sure. It sounds like you've had some a pretty amazing projects, but if you had unlimited time and money, what is your dream project? Has it changed now?
My dream project. Are we talking? I'm going to restrict myself to Phytophthora because I've got lots of other interests and I don't I think I should get back to
okay.
And it's interesting because some of the stuff that really needs to be done is some of the really basic work, but that takes quite a lot of people's time and resources, so it's only been done to a certain extent. So one of the things that we have a reasonably good idea of the host range of Phytophthora cinnamomi, because DBCA 20-odd years ago did a really, really, really huge screening of representatives from most of the plant families from the southwest of Western Australia, and from that they interpreted the likely impact on the whole of the genus. So that was done to a certain extent, but we've got a lot of other Phytophthora species and we don't really understand what their trajectory is because we've done limited pathogenicity trials, and that a pathogenicity trial, I need to explain that, don't I?
Yeah.
I haven't. You're looking blank and you're going, what are you talking about? Okay, so the basis of plant pathology is this thing called Koch's postulate. And in Koch's postulate, you have to observe a symptom, you have to isolate an organism, you have to put that organism back on the plant and reproduce those symptoms. And that's called Koch's postulate. That's how you prove that that organism caused that disease.
Oh, right. Okay.
And a pathogenicity trial is a variation on that. So you have your well, in this case, a plant, and you're trying to see how pathogenic or how much it's impacted by this pathogen. So in the case of Phytophthora, you usually grow your plants, you add the Phytophthora into the system, and you see if it dies or it doesn't die. And that's a pathogenicity trial.
Right. Okay.
And they take a lot of resources.
So you're hoping to do more of them?
Well, I'm not going to be doing any more of them. But if I had unlimited resources and loads of people and loads of glasshouse space, I would do a lot of those, just because if you know what is and isn't susceptible, it gives you an idea of how well you could restore back into areas. Because I have a theory, which one of my last students worked on a little bit, and we'd like to take it further, and we probably will anyway, is that when Phytophthora Cinnamomi first goes through a site, it's the inoculum builds up, or the amount of it builds up so much that you get it's basically more there than would be there naturally. And so it goes through and it takes out the susceptible species, but it also takes out the not so susceptible species and maybe even some of the tolerant species, just because the pathogen load is so high. But after it's been through, it disappears. Like when there's no more susceptible plants, it sort of disappears. And we think that you could restore those areas with some of the more susceptible plants, and they would be okay because the pathogen isn't so active. But we need to prove that. So that's also something that I'd really like to do more of.
Yeah. That gives a bit of hope as well.
That does give a bit of hope. Like we don't know how far that could go, but if it's been fallow, I mean not fallow as in if it's been like no new plants have been dying for a reasonable period of time, maybe we can put things back in there. Yeah, we hope.
We hope. Yeah. Yeah. My next question is off topic again, but I was told to ask you this question because I'm assuming this is a pretty hot topic and that you've probably got a good explanation or a good reasoning for something. So I was asked in WA, we're dealing now with this highly impactful insect, the polyphagous shothole borer. What is it doing to our native plants? So everyone can have a baseline of what it is, but how would you recommend we should be dealing with it?
Okay, so step back. It's an insect carrying a fungus, and it's the fungus that is killing the plants, not the insect.
Oh, straight away I was wrong.
Yeah. No, so everyone talks about the polyphagous shothole borer and about the beetle, but it's actually the fusarium disease that's associated with the beetle that is killing the plants. So it's what's called an ambrosia beetle, lovely name, and ambrosia beetles have mycangia, which are specialised parts where they keep the spores of fungi, and they carry that fungus around with them. And when they make a hole into a susceptible tree, they put the fungus in there, and that fungus grows because it's a wood-growing fungus, and it produces spores, and that is what the young, they lay their eggs in there, and that's what they eat while they're in there and make their galleries and everything like that. So what's it doing to native plants? Well, as you would know, like we were talking earlier, like how Phytophthora cinnamomi is in the asset-based part of the invasion curve. Like it's spread really widely and it's really hard to manage, and so we're just managing or trying to protect the assets. Polyphagous shothole borer is much, much earlier on the curve, and you would know that it was under eradication, and they were trying to exclude it from where it was, which was restricted within the Perth area, and now it's been moved into what we call, it's a transition to management. So they're saying, we're not going to be able to eradicate it, but we would like to contain and manage it as best that we can. and it has a load of hosts, lots. That's why it's called polyphagous, many eater. It has a lot of trees that it's quite happy in, but it has trees that it loves more than other trees, and they're mostly ornamental trees. So they're not, most of the ones that it really loves are not, so far, are not our native trees. And a lot of the removal of trees has been about reducing the numbers of these, what they call amplifier hosts, because if you remove them out of the environment, there are less suitable breeding grounds for the beetle, and you might be able to keep the numbers down. That said, the beetle has moved into our wetland areas, and our melaleucas seem to be moderately susceptible. We're just at the very beginning of trying to understand what's happening in that space and if there's anything that we can do about it. But right now, like as of just over a month ago, there is finally a research program that's been put in place. And so it's a program that is put together by WARC, which is the Western Australian Agricultural Research Alliance. It involves DPIRD as one of the key stakeholders because they've been managing it up to date, and then Curtin, Murdoch and UWA. And the part of the project we're going to be doing here at Murdoch is around trying to understand the pathogen more and understand what is susceptible to the pathogen and what isn't. And we're going to be doing as much work as we can with DBCA on native plants, particularly in the Perth waterways. But yeah, we don't know and we can't say what the impact is going to be yet because it's too early in the process.
Right, because there was a lot of, like I heard about it across the news and everywhere. It was like really, people were quite worried about what it could be. Is it still, are we still?
Oh, we're still very worried. But I mean, for the native, for what would happen if it would just be, like if it got into our native environment, just because we don't know. I mean, it's like something like myrtle rust that's moved up the whole of the east coast of Australia. It's not down here in Western Australia. We know that a lot of our myrtaceae is going to be highly susceptible. So that's already something that we're really, really concerned about. And so, there's areas where they've prioritised plants for seed collections and for restoration or maintaining them in collections in case it got here and wiped them out, for example. With polyphagous short-hole borer, it changes its host preferences in every country that it's been introduced to. So we can't predict very well which of our native plants are going to be most susceptible. So we just have to try to do the work.
Has the way it's been managed now, has that been the best?
It's the only,
It's the only way.
Yeah.
I just got a quick thought about the myrtle rust. Is that, because I remember when Lauren, who was Sarah's friend that came over, they were saying that they think that the myrtle rust, like, did it go to New Zealand by like potentially like
blew?
It blew over.
They think, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a long way to.
It's the same genotype that's in them. But I mean, that's apparently, because that's the prevailing winds, that's apparently happened before. Apparently.
It's a long way for a bit of pollen to fly.
But am I making this up, or have we got rusts in Western Australia that have come from Kenya, wheat rusts? I think that there are some fungi that are quite good at surviving and getting blown around in the atmosphere.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So those you can't even blame people for.
No, that's just natural translocation in a way, right? Yeah. This has been fantastic. I've learned so much right from the very start. The first question, learning it was a brown algae.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I just only thought of brown algae as aquatic. I guess it is kind of aquatic in a sense, having a waterborne
I forgot to say, they're called water molds. But then we've got a whole range of new species that we've found in some of the driest areas of Western Australia. So figure that.
Yeah, and they're still like, well, I guess they are the same family, so they have to be part of the brown
same
algae.
genus. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been awesome, and thank you so much because I know how busy you are to take time and come and speak to me. And
you got me on one of my favourite topics.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do another one soon. There's a few topics we can talk about. So
yeah. Anyway, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
paramount importance.